The following segment is sponsored by Well-Green Platinum, trading in the U.S. as WGPLF and on the TSX as WG. Located in the Yukon Territory, Canada, the Well-Green project has the potential to become one of the world's largest and lowest-cost open-pit producers of platinum group metals and nickel. Find them on the web at wellgreenplatinum.com.
David Morgan is an expert on silver, gold, and precious metals investments. He's a world-renowned lecturer appearing on CNBC and the Fox Business Channel. He's an author, having penned Get the Skinny on Silver Investing. And Mr. Morgan is a regular contributor and friend of the Ellis Martin Report. I'm Ellis Martin. In this segment, I visited with the silver guru, David Morgan, in eastern Washington state, not too far from the Silver Valley. We had a peaceful get-together on the back 40, and then this conversation.
David, welcome back to the program. Thanks for having me out to your personal Ponderosa here in Washington State. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ellis, and thanks for coming out. You've been here once before, I think, or maybe twice. Yeah, it's kind of fun to see you literally in my backyard and be able to do an interview face to face.
It's very cool, and it's very peaceful out here, and I'm enjoying myself and not anxious to get back home anytime soon, but I know you're going to kick me out after a while. But anyway, I digress. David, you and I could go back and forth, as we usually do, and talk about the mining sector and gold and silver, and there's certainly a lot to talk about, or perhaps nothing to talk about. But I need to ask you, what's on top of your plate right now? What piques your interest when eyes are off of the sector at the moment?
Well, I think I'll address the sector. When off the sector, I have other interests, and you know a lot of them since we're friends. But I have to mention the gold smash and the silver smash that took place recently. And in fact, I'm writing the editorial for the Morgan Report, started this morning, going through all the ups and downs and why the metals prices are where they are and how they got there and why it's not over and all of that. So I just briefly state that price is not reflective of the quality of the asset, and the gold run will begin. Silver will come along with it, and I do still expect that to happen probably in the fall of this year. But as we did a little pre-interview, we're always looking for opportunities in the resource sector, and we have one that we've been following for more than a year. No one on our service knows about it except for our mastermind group. The main function of the mastermind group is not to put out high risk, high speculative companies at an early stage, which we do from time to time, but it's mostly to get the most beneficial information from all sources for the mastermind group, meaning that we get private interviews with some of the better knowns in the industry and insights that they probably wouldn't get anywhere else. But from time to time, we do see opportunities that are available that would be the liking of, say, a fund manager or an accredited investor or something along those lines, that we will, of course, put out to that group. And we have done that with this company. But we've been following the story, as I said, for over a year. And it really is almost more of a technology stock than a mining stock. In fact, there is somebody that's in the newsletter industry that's extremely well known. And he spent some time with the CEO of the company, which we both know, and said this was a real game changer. This is going to be instrumental in the mining sector. I believe the same. I don't want to put words in somebody's mouth, but I do want to kind of give a heads up to those that listen to this program, because it's something that we will be featuring in the Morgan Report once we make our boots on the ground. And it's going to be everybody. Normally on a mining visit, it's me and maybe one other person or maybe two people at the most. This time we're taking everybody. It's going to be my webmaster, both analysts and myself. So it'll be four of us minimum on this project. And the project is very environmentally friendly.
And it's a mining project.
Yeah, what I call it, they may have a different wording for it, but the essence is it's a self-contained mobile mining unit. And this is something that, again, could be, and I think will be, a game changer. Because let's do a quick example. The pilot project that we're going to go visit here probably within the next month or so is in one of the 50 states of the Union, and it's...
that narrows it down, by the way.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to give out too much. And basically, it's for a project. I'll say project, not a mine, because a lot of these situations are not mines yet. And you can roll this thing on. It's the size of like a large RV, and it's modular. And you can roll this thing on and go to, like, say, the tailings that are there that already exist. And basically, the only manual labor is putting the rock into the hopper. And after that, the process starts. and it starts to crush the rock and water through it and grind it and get it down into what we call ore grade. And it's very efficient. In fact, on the environmental side, if you just look at the ability this project has, it has reduced water consumption because all the water is self-contained. So that's a big feat for a lot of projects, is where do we get the water from?
So the unit shows up with its own water supply?
It's got its own water supply, and it comes out at the end basically cleaner than most water you'll find anywhere. I mean, It's very clean. There is some usage. In other words, it doesn't recover 100%. It covers like in the 90-something percent. I want to give a number that's inaccurate. I think it's really high, like 96% or something, but you might have to add a little water, but that's something you could do with a pickup truck. The discharges are basically self-contained. It accelerates the permitting process because you really don't have to have a permit when it's all self-contained. So if you're, let's just back off a little bit and say you've got a project, you need financing, you need to get funds, you're in the bottom of the market, which you are right now, you know it's good, and you basically are kind of out of luck. Well, this mobile mining unit, and you roll it on and you start these tailings that you already have on the property, and you start to recover gold and silver out of this. Or you could do other metals, but primarily it's built for the precious metals. But you can tweak the circuit for other metals if you want to. And there's no toxic chemicals required. There's no tailings pond involved. It's got an extremely small environmental footprint. And there's basically no infrastructure required. I mean, you basically drive this thing on, not that you have to go get the tailings and throw them up into the hopper, as I said earlier. So that's it. And it optimizes the yield of the gold-bearing material, speaking gold in this case. The effective recoveries go through several processes. One, just the basic gravity device, which is one of the first rounds, and it reduces a lot of the workload. And again, the permitting, the efficiencies are quite high, the recoveries are quite good, very economical. So again, I keep reaching back, but if you're a project owner and you start to get gold out of these tailings and you do a split with this company, let's say for talking purposes, a 50-50 basis, and all of a sudden you've produced $2 million worth of gold over, say, a 6-month time frame, or $1 million. Just making up numbers. The numbers aren't that important. They're important, but it's the idea. But you don't have to dilute your shareholders because you have on site this material that you have now refined and are able to sell at the marketplace, and there's no dilution in shares. So you don't look for financing. Your financing is on your project. So I want to be very, very clear here. First of all, we want to really wade through the entire thing. The pilot plant's working quite well. I've got movies of it, but we're going to get boots on the ground. We're going to examine it. We're going to take our own film crew, which we do. Our premium service, as you well know, Ellis, is an advantage you have for the Morgan Report that you usually don't have at some other companies, which means you get to go along with us on some of these property visits, and you get to see it live and in person, just sitting at your computer and playing the film. So after our due diligence, we're probably going to write it up. Does that mean we're going to write it up in the August report? No. Probably September, October, November, I don't know, probably within the next 3 months, if and only if it passes our due diligence. But it's one of those things that is very exciting, especially during the doldrums that we're in right now. Going back in time, things are supposed to be kind of at the level they're at right now a year ago. And, I'm old enough and have enough gray hair and been around the industry long enough to know that things never go as easily as they do on paper. And once you implement them, there's always bugs to work out and problems, and things don't match right. And there's things that need to be accomplished before you get it optimized. But that's what's happening now. But being able to unlock the value of a small deposit, again, this wouldn't work for a new mine, it wouldn't work for Agnico Eagle. It's working for the small properties that have assets that they are well known. And again, the tailings is the best example. That's the one that we're using for this pilot situation. By the way, I do own shares. I was involved with the private placement. And once we write it up, there'll be the opportunity for Morgan Report subscribers to get on board at a lower price. At least currently, it's a lower price than what I paid for on the financing. That's quite typical today with the problems in our sector being low prices followed by lower prices followed by even lower prices. So I don't mind that. That doesn't bother me at all. I feel somewhat remiss to our mastermind people, but they understand the risks involved. But it unlocks the value from a small deposit, accelerates cash flow significantly because most of these type of projects would never be able to get the financings they need to make a profitable business at this point in the industry.
Well, it's been that way for a long time in the mining sector. section of the Virginia market anyway, because to attempt to raise money to bring the ore to market has always been an issue, and it's dependent on fund managers and institutions, and that's never been free-flowing, not in the last few years, and it's impossible now. And one of the things about energy companies, if you've got oil wells and they're producing oil, that's immediate money. You don't have to go to market for this. So essentially, this particular device, this machinery, affords a way for a company with no budget to generate cash flow right away.
Absolutely. No, well said, and more succinctly than yours truly. Again, it's low capital expenditure required for each selected project. The portable units can be removed from the project and redeployed at any time. Of course, you have to have the right kind of property. You can't just say, oh, I know it's there, and start throwing dirt in the hopper and expect to get gold out of it.
Well, who's doing the due diligence? Because I imagine this technology company, they're risking the equity by bringing this equipment in. There's cost involved with that. Are their engineers doing the due diligence on the property? The company's engineers, the geologists have to provide the data? I'm curious.
Yeah, exactly. There's a team that will go in and evaluate the project before they send the machine in there and make a pretty good look, if you will, at what they have, where it is, how accessible it is. I mean, this thing could go almost anywhere, and then just take it from there, and then it's seen as believing. So for this particular pilot project, again, I think it's a 50-50 split, so all the gold that's refined that goes into ore and is sold on the market, half goes to the company and half goes to this company that I'm talking about. And that's a pretty fair deal for both parties. According to the CEO of the company that I'm quite close to, and he has a track record, he's brought a small silver company to a level that was purchased by mid-tier some years ago, and of course shareholders did well with that acquisition. And he told me about this idea, I think about 2 years ago, and I said, wow, why didn't someone else think of that? Because it really makes a lot of sense for a small operator to start in and forego the permitting, forego all that's involved with starting a mine. And we all know that to get a mine permitted and up and going is a huge CapEx, capital expenditure. It takes tons of money. And then, of course, you usually have to dilute the shareholders, and all that's by the wayside now. So this is a game changer for the small operator. So yeah, they go in, they start it, and let's say they did their due diligence, they drive this thing on board, and they start in for, and I'm not going to speak for the company, but 3 or 4 weeks go by and they're really not getting the yield that they thought that they would. Then they're just basically going to drive off, and I'm not going to get into the contracts because I haven't even seen one with the company per se, but again, it's a split, and it's agreed to on both sides. And according to the founder of this company, he's got a backlog of several companies that have got their hand up saying, me too, me too, me too, because they know they have decent projects. They don't want to do anything except raise money, and this is the most efficient, effective way to do it. Again, I'll just repeat myself. There is somebody in the newsletter industry very well followed, very well known, been known to get a lot of exposure to companies. He does more on the speculative side than I do. He will be writing this up somewhat after the Morgan Report does. And once it hits his website, there'll be great attention to it, I believe. Depending on the market. I mean, I've had deals that I thought were absolutely awesome. I wrote them up and nothing really took place. And then someone else wrote them up and they took off. I've had stuff happen where I wrote it up, thought it was great, and then someone else wrote it up and still stayed stagnant. It's very hard to get one of these smaller companies or any company these days to move because, again, the sentiment in this industry is so low. But again, this is like a technology innovation that's really low-tech / high-tech. Low-tech meaning almost everything that is in this mobile mill is available off the shelf. It's just put together in sequence in a way that makes it very, very smart way to go for the gold.
The Ellis Martin Report is sponsored by Wellgreen Platinum. Wellgreen Platinum is a Canadian mining exploration and development company focused on the active advancement of its 100% owned Wellgreen PGM and nickel project toward production. A 2015 economic assessment shows the Wellgreen project, located in the Canadian Yukon, to be potentially the second largest PGM producer outside Southern Africa and Russia, with average annual production of over 200,000 ounces platinum, palladium, and gold, along with 128 billion pounds of nickel and copper from just 34% of the pit-constrained resource, making it possibly one of the largest in the world. Estimates show that once in production with assets near or at the surface, this low-cost producer may generate cash flow exceeding as much as $330 million per year. Situated along a major highway in a mining-friendly jurisdiction with an active market for PGMs and nickel, And with a strong management team, Wellgreen is certainly to be considered a candidate for your portfolio. Find them on the web at wellgreenplatinum.com.
With near $1,100 gold, of course it's hard to get specifics. Any idea the potential production cost with, let's say, tailings of the nature of the type that you're talking about per ounce?
It varies, as we both know, Ellis. There's grade and there's grade, and what I mean by that dumb statement is that you can have a pretty high grade project. Let's pick a number, like 6 grams of gold per ton, but the yield is low because there's a lot of nasties with it, or if you're doing a conventional mining operation, the strip ratio might be very high, or you got to move a lot of dirt or waste with it. So that's what's evaluated on the start, like you mentioned a moment ago, Ellis, where you have to do your due diligence really before you roll the mobile mill on there. But in today's world, some of the biggest miners in the world are mining a gram per ton. I'm not saying this machine could do a gram per ton. I think it's got to be somewhere in a 3 gram or higher. That's what my memory says. I'm not able to disclose an exact number right now because honestly I don't recall. But it would vary. If there's something very clean at the 3 grams per ton, I think it would work because all those associated costs that normally go into a project, you don't have to spend them.
Well, the demand's always going to be there for gold, no matter what the market says right now on paper. I'm wondering, is this equipment proprietary or are the patents? Will this be the only source of this type of processing available in the world?
Yes, for the time being. I mean, let's be honest here. You can have a patent and not be that well protected because, first of all, as I said, it's mostly off-the-shelf equipment that's linked together, and someone can put in something different in the circuit, and all of a sudden it's within the law that it's a new product and that type of thing. But I think there's enough of a head start here that this company will do quite well. And there's certainly room for competitors. Obviously, there's a lot of projects out there, these small ones, that do have merit in this methodology that would never have merit in the old school way of doing mining.
What's the treasury look like for this company without giving anything away here? What if they need to ramp up right away?
Hopefully well. I say hopefully because I want to be honest here. They just did a raise very recently. It's enough to get the company to the next level. But like most of these type of situations, again, repeating myself, in today's environment, it's difficult to raise funds, but they do have hardware. So the company's backed by a physical asset that produces gold, basically. It looks to me from this last financing that just took place recently that it'll be in place. Not only is it in place and producing, which we're going to go film and put out in a write-up and film product that we do for our premium client, it'll be there for everybody to do their own due diligence on. I mean, I want to be very clear, it's a highly speculative situation, but again, it's something that is new to the mining industry in so many ways. And we really like it from the aspect of, I'm going to digress and go into kind of, I don't want to go my life story, but I've always been kind of for the underdog. It's one of the reasons probably I'm more favorable to silver than gold. But this is a situation where someone has put their heart and soul into a project and really is at their wit's end and they know what they've got. They really do have something where they can get rebooted and start their facility. Whereas without this, they'd have to wait probably for the next mining cycle to take place.
So the time factor can be reduced by as much as 2 or 3 years in this particular market, right?
Yeah, at least I'd say. Depends again on the project. But, get a mine out and permitted and the pre-feasibility and the feasibility and a bankable feasibility and get the money and then start building the roads and getting the water supply and the electrical. And if all that's very handy and nearby, which in some cases it is, still takes years. Whereas this situation is like, do the due diligence, get the team out there, say, yeah, it looks like you have what you say you have. Again, the proof's in the pudding. Wheel this thing on, drive it on board. It's all self-contained. Start throwing stuff into the hopper and seeing what comes out the other end. And if it's good grade and saleable in the marketplace, you start making money right here, right now. Now, with that money, you can do whatever a good mining project would entail. In other words, you could ramp it up and put in a full mine, or maybe you would just go with this or whatever. But it's a situation, again, that gives a lot of ability for a small operator to operate and get cash flow almost immediately.
Now, I know your subscribers are going to be interested in it because you're hardcore subscribers as well as my followers. We like opportunity. We look for opportunity when no one else is looking at the sector. But I'm thinking, as I'm listening to this program, and you mentioned the pilot project somewhere here in the U.S., I'm listening to this program as a director of maybe one of the many junior mining companies that are still out there, listening with projects in Mexico, in the Yukon, and I'm thinking that I need a company saver right now. How do I get this machine? How do I learn about it? Do I have to wait for your video? I want to talk to David. I mean, there's so many points of potential excitement here. What do you say to those individuals that are listening to this broadcast right now?
Well, the founder of the company, of course, is in touch, and he's in Vancouver, and he's pretty well known. And if there are, say, a handful or two of companies that are already aware of it, and then we'll write it up for our members. And then once that's done, then this other individual that's very popular, very well known, very outspoken, probably going to write it as well. Once that takes place, then I think it'll be pretty well spread out through the junior mining sector. So at that point, you'll have all kinds of companies that'll be raising their hands and jumping up and down and saying, me too, come on my property and let's go for it. Let's do a split on the revenues based on what metal we have. And that's where they'll be more selective, really. Like you said, well, how do you determine who you're going to go for? And the answer is, well, probably whoever's going to be best to the bottom line of this company. But it'll allow the company to grow. So instead of having one mobile unit, you'll have 2, 3, 4, and there's probably an optimum amount. I don't know what that would be, especially in the doldrums we are now, but I could feature 3, 4, 5, I think, pretty easily. I think there's probably a sweet spot where you don't want to build too many of these. The marketplace is pretty good at determining that overall, and we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, so are you going to recommend to, let's say me, your friend and business associate, that I consider this particular company as an investment opportunity? And will you recommend it to our followers as a potential investment opportunity? And in what category would that fall into? I'm guessing it would be very speculative.
Yeah, it's a highly speculative situation, so you want to bet risk capital on it. So that would be number one. Number two, realize I'm already involved on a financial level, basically at a 50% premium to where the company's selling right now. That could change. As far as what will happen to the stock price once it's better known, probably will increase, but we can't promise any of that. And I think it's something that the market needs a shot in the arm. Probably the junior market more than the seniors, although everybody's suffering. And this might just be one of those catalysts, and I'm not saying it will be, I'm saying it could be, where all of a sudden there's some interest in the market again because this is such a great thing, such a great technology, if you will, for the industry at large. It will basically could ramp up the idea that, wow, this is a game changer. I mean, that's what I believe the CEO told me that my friend in the industry said about it. It's a game changer, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. That was my understanding. I would also go on to say that could be one of those that we've gotten skillful at or lucky. Take your whatever adjective you wish. If you go back in better days, I mean, when we started with Western Copper, that became Western Silver, which became bought out by Glamis and then bought out by Goldcorp, I mean, that company was a speculative company, and rightfully so when it was Western Copper. But we watched that company grow, and as it grew and became a different company, it moved up from the speculative list to a higher listing in the Morgan Report because it had become a different company. I mean, this Penasquito mine, pretty well known, and it does a pretty good bottom line for Goldcorp even today. I'm not saying this is going to happen. What I'm saying is that with risk comes reward, and high risk, a lot of these things fail, and certainly I will be truthful. We've had some really pretty awesome projects that have not worked out. I could go on and on there. I don't want to dwell and beat myself up because, like others, we've lost money. But if you obey the rules, and the rules being, how to use the Morgan Report, and you bet a little to win a lot, and if the company starts actually proving itself, then you can add in more funds. That makes sense. In other words, we've always been in the belief that you are much better off putting big money into big companies. In other words, one of my earliest subscribers back in year 2, 3, or 4 never invested in a mining project in his entire life and was just very excited about the sector. And I recommended a company that's in the top tier. And it's was about a $14 stock. Today it's about a $40 stock. And some of these top tiers that we've recommended have done that continue to up and down, but the overall trend is up. And these are usually royalty companies. We make no bones about it. We're in the analytical business. We're here to make money. And the best way to make money in this sector, and has been through good and bad times, is to look at the royalty companies. But anyway, point being is bet a little, win a lot. If the company improves, you could bet more. If it improves more, you can sell off and have a free ride, which if you double or triple your money, you sell it off and this thing really goes and you got a core position, you could do quite well. On the other hand, and I'll talk about the other hand, I've been in this industry 40 years and I've seen stuff that looked great and didn't work out. Will that be the case here? I would have to say, truthfully, to be determined. We don't know, but we're excited enough to go down there, film everything, look at everything, talk to not the operator so much, which we'll be doing, but also the project owner. And ask him, well, what do you think? Are you getting the yields you thought you had, making up numbers, 6 grams per ton, and out the other end, you're only yielding, 3.5? Just get I want both sides of the story, as I always try to achieve.
It would seem that you're probably going to follow the companies that this particular mining technology company partners with so that you can potentially profit as an investor from their bottom line as well.
Possibly. I wouldn't rule that out. It just depends on, where it goes. I mean, I have my own thoughts on how to make this company more efficient and what I would do if I were running it, but I'm not. It's different than the model that they have, and I'm not in the business of telling anybody how to run their own company. If it were me, I'd probably take some of the product, gold, and store it, put it on the shelf at these prices. But, again, I'm not running the company.
David, how do we subscribe to the Morgan Report if we haven't already done so?
The best way is just go to the website, TheMorganReport.com, and the sign-up features on a drop-down menu. We have the basic, the premium, which is the ones that you get the video on, and then, of course, the mastermind I mentioned earlier.
Well, David, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and in this case, in person, an extreme pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with me.
And I just want to say a disclaimer on here. 1, you heard me once, but I do own it. 2, the verbal is the best to my ability as far as the numbers I gave and that type of thing. I want to be clear on the idea. I just want to disclaim that, again, the best of my ability. I don't want to overstate anything. I usually try very much to understate things, but nonetheless, the write-up may be somewhat different than what I verbalize here because when we put it in print, it's not a hearsay interview. I'll make certain to absolute scrutiny that we have available that all that we put in that's factually accurate will be vetted before we publish.
Very good. David, thanks again for joining me today on the program.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I've been speaking with the silver guru, David Morgan. His website is TheMorganReport.com. Listen to the segment again on the homepage of our website, EllisMartinReport.com, or download the entire Ellis Martin Report on iTunes. The preceding segment is sponsored by Well Green Platinum, trading in the U.S. as WGPLF and on the TSX as WG. Located in the Yukon Territory, Canada, the Well Green Project has the potential to become one of the world's largest and lowest-cost open-pit producers of platinum group metals and nickel. Find them on the web at wellgreenplatinum.com.